Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tale, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, and shocking betrayal. My parents retired and demanded I support them, saying, "You owe us for raising you." My brother smirked. "Yeah, it's your turn to pay now." But when they found out what I had done with my finances, they broke down in shock. I was already 8 when my parents retired, and decided I was their retirement plan. It started with a phone call from my mom. "We've decided to stop working," she said. "It's time for you to step up. You owe us for raising you." I thought she was joking. She wasn't my brother. Always the golden child chimed in, "Yeah, it's your turn to pay now." I was stunned. I had built a life for myself in Austin, Texas, working as a software engineer. I had no debts, a modest home, and a comfortable lifestyle. I had worked hard to get here, often without their support. Now they expected me to fund their retirement, growing up in a small town in Oklahoma. My parents were strict and frugal. They mileseved in hard work, but rarely showed affection. My brother, 2 years younger, was always their favorite. He could do no wrong, while I was constantly criticized when I got a scholarship to the University of Texas. They barely acknowledged it when he landed my first job. They didn't care. But now they saw me as their financial savior. I knew I had to protect myself. I consulted a financial advisor and set up a trust. My assets were secured, and I made sure my finances were airtight. Then I waited a month later. They showed up at my door. "We need money." My dad said, "We've earned it." I calmly explained that I had my own responsibilities and couldn't support them. They were furious. "You're ungrateful," my mom yelled. "We sacrificed everything for you." I reminded them of the times they ignored me, the lack of support, and the emotional abuse. They didn't care. I decided it was time to show them what I had done. I pulled out the documents and showed them the trust, the secured assets, and the legal protections. They were shocked. "You planned this?" My brother asked. "Yes," I replied. "I knew this day would come." They laughed in silence. I haven't heard from them since. I continued to live my life free from their control. Sometimes you have to protect yourself, even from family. 3 weeks after they left my house, I got a certified letter. It was from a lawyer, apparently. My parents were suing me. They claimed I promised to support them and that I owed them money. They said it was an oral agreement and tried to drag me into court for financial support. I felt sick. I called my own attorney. He read the letter, paused, and then laughed. "They're reaching." He said, "They don't have a case, but will respond." Properly, still just the idea that they would try this. My own parents dragging me through legal threats to squeeze money out of me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something in me snapped. There was one thing they didn't know. Back in college, I had helped my uncle. My dad's estranged brother set up an LLC for his side business. He ran a quiet little storage and logistics company out in Tulsa. We kept in touch all these years. He never liked my dad. When I told him what was going on, he said, "Come visit." So I drove to Tulsa the next weekend. We sat in his cluttered office sipping gas station coffee. "You know, they did the same thing to me," he said, tried to shake me down when I left home. He opened a dusty drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and said, "It's your turn to fight back." Inside that folder were receipts, letters, and old documents. My uncle had kept everything back in the day. My parents had borrowed money from him. Big amounts, never repaid it. We found 3 signed IUs, all handwritten, with both my dad and mom's names on them. "Let's remind them," he said with a grin. With his lawyer's help, we drafted a countersuit. When my brother heard about it, "I lost it." He called me screaming over the phone, "You think you're some genius? You're tearing the family apart." I told him the truth. They made the choice to sue me. I'm just protecting myself then. He dropped something I wasn't ready for. Mom's been gambling. What she lost a ton. Credit cards are maxed. Dad's too proud to admit it. So they came after you. That hit hard. They weren't just manipulative. They were desperate. And they still wouldn't own it. We showed up to the courthouse on a cloudy Tuesday morning in Austin. They looked different. Tired. My dad's hair was completely gray now. Mom wore dark glasses. My brother sat behind them, arms crossed, staring at me like I was the villain. My lawyer handed over the file from my uncle. Their faces fell the moment they saw those old IUs. Their lawyer pulled them aside. They argued in whispers. The judge hadn't even said a word yet, and already I knew this was over, but I didn't feel myself. I felt empty, because even if I won, I lost something bigger. A week after the court hearing, I got a call from a woman named Clara Monroe. She said she used to work at the same bank where my parents held an old joint account, one they hadn't touched in years. She had recognized my last name and reached out privately. "I know this is weird," she said. "But you should know. Your parents had a decent amount of money. In that account, it wasn't touched. Until 6 months ago, right before they announced their retirement, she sent me screenshots carefully avoiding any breach of privacy laws. She said over $92,000 had been withdrawn over 3 months, mostly ATM withdrawals and wire transfers. They had money, they were never broke. I tried calling my parents after. That no answer. Then I tried my brother. Disconnected. I called their old neighbors in Oklahoma. The house had been sold cash. Offer, no forwarding address. Bit me, they were running not from me, but from the consequences, from their debts, from their shame, maybe from everything. 3 weeks later, I got a visit at my door. It was my cousin Miles, my uncle's son. He looked nervous. He handed me a folded piece of paper, found this in one of Dad's safe boxes, he said, "Thought you should see it. It was a letter from my mom dated just before they filed the lawsuit. If this doesn't work, we'll vanish. Your father can't live with the idea of being poor. Your brother thinks we're owed this. But deep down, I know it's not right. I'm sorry we failed you. We didn't plan well. We didn't treat you the way you deserved. You were always the smart one. Do what you have to do." I sat with that letter for hours. It didn't change what they did, but it made it harder to hate them. Then came another twist. I didn't see coming. A lawyer in Tulsa called me. Turns out my parents had used my name and my social security number to take out a small loan. Years ago, $18,000 defaulted. The creditor had finally tracked it back to me. I was stunned. They didn't just try to guilt me. They used me literally. My uncle's lawyer jumped in again. We were able to prove identity theft charges were dropped, but now there was a record, a paper trail, and that opened a new door with the help of my lawyer and my uncle. We dug deeper. Turns out my parents had a pattern of financial abuse going back decades. They'd borrowed money from at least 3 extended family members. All unpaid, they'd defaulted on a loan from their church, even manipulated an elderly aunt into signing over part of her property. Every time they played the victims, every time they vanished before consequence. Shit, and I realized I wasn't just their retirement plan, I was just their latest target. I wouldn't have known about it if it weren't for Miles. Again one night he called and said he found an old key hidden in his dad's garage labeled deposit box. Ardmore Bank. We drove to Ardmore, Oklahoma that weekend. I had no idea what to expect. The clerk found the box number and asked for ID. The signature on the access form had both my parents' names. When we opened it, there wasn't much inside. Just a few old photos, a cheap L-looking bracelet, and an envelope labeled for him. Inside was another letter from my dad. "If you're reading this, then we lost. I didn't want to go out this way, but I couldn't face life broke and forgotten. You'll think we were greedy. Maybe we were, but we were scared. I never figured out how to show you. I was proud. I thought money would make up for the years. Guess not. No apology, no real ownership, just excuses. They never changed. I thought it would in there. I really did. But then came the voicemail from a woman named Vanessa. She lived in Albuquerque and said she had been seeing my dad for a while. He had told her he was divorced and that he and his grown son didn't talk. He said you were angry with him over money. She said he left some things here. Do you want them? I drove out to New Mexico. What I found wasn't just a few things. He had been living with her comfortable quietly. She had no idea he was married. No idea he had a whole other life. He had drained my mother's retirement fund to live a second life. I decided to find my brother, not because I missed him, but because I wanted answers. He was living in a small condo outside Phoenix, looked thinner, worn down. He let me in. Barely spoke. I didn't know. He finally said, not all of it. He admitted they had told him I'd pay their bills, that I'd been groomed. For it, they lied to him too. Kept him in the dark, fed him just enough to keep him angry at me. I told him about the second family, the gambling, the fake loans, Vanessa. His face went white. I thought they were just struggling. He said I didn't know they were criminals. We sat in silence for a while, then I asked why. Didn't you ever help me? I thought you had it easy. He said turns out we were both used. I waited until the investigation was over with everything. We uncovered the forged documents, the unpaid debts, the hidden assets, the identity theft. My lawyer filed one last motion. We put liens on their hidden assets, including the condo in Albuquerque. We forced the sale. The money, I didn't keep it. I split it among everyone they stole from the old aunt, the church, the family members they used over the years, every single person who'd been lied to. As for me, I walked away. Clean, no charges, no deaths, but not without scars. 3 months later, I got word from Vanessa. My father died heart failure alone in a rented room. My mother, no one knows, she vanished after the condo sale. Maybe she changed her name. Maybe she's still out there blaming the world, my brother. We talk sometimes. Nothing deep, just quiet calls. We're not close, but we're no longer enemies. And me. I kept the letter from my dad. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder, sometimes. Family doesn't protect you sometimes. They're the ones you need protection from. They wanted me to pay for being born. Instead, they paid for everything they'd done.